Jake Morrison stood in the center of the massive council chamber, his hands steady as he held the datapad containing humanity's proposal. The room stretched out before him like a cathedral made of alien metal and crystal. High above, curved, walls rose toward a domed ceiling that showed the stars beyond. Hundreds of alien beings filled the tiered seats that circled the speaking floor. The chamber buzzed with sounds that no human throat could make. Crystalline beings called Zephyrites hummed in musical tones that made the air shimmer, the insect-like. Kithara clicked and chittered with their mandibles. Floating clouds of gas that were the Vorthan pulsed with colors that humans had no names for. All of these sounds mixed together into what Jake could only describe as barely controlled amusement. He had practiced this moment for months. Earth's best scientists had worked on the proposal he now carried. It outlined humanity's ideas for new defensive technologies that could protect all the species in the galaxy. The research was solid. The innovations were real. But looking at the faces around him, Jake wondered if anyone would even listen. Speaker Veltar of the hegemony rose from the highest seat in the chamber. He was tall and thin, with 4 arms and 6 eyes arranged in pairs down the sides of his elongated head. His skin had a purple tint that darkened when he was annoyed. Right now, it was almost black. The assembly recognizes Ambassador Morrison of the human species, Veltar announced. His voice carried easily through the chamber without any visible amplification. You may present your proposal. Jake activated his datapad and began to speak. He kept his voice calm and professional, just as he had been trained. Honored members of the Galactic Council, humanity comes before you today with new ideas for our mutual defense. Our scientists have developed shield technologies that could protect our worlds from external threats. We also have innovations in weapon systems that could give us an edge against any hostile forces we might encounter. He gestured to the holographic display that materialized above his head. It showed detailed schematics of human technology, energy readings, and test results. The images rotated slowly so every member of the council could see them clearly. These technologies combine human engineering with principles we have learned from studying galactic science, Jake continued. We believe that by sharing our innovations, we can strengthen the defenses of all our worlds. A sound began to fill the chamber. It started low, like wind through trees, but grew louder. Jake realized it was laughter. Not human laughter, but the alien equivalent from dozens of different species. The Zephyrites' humming became sharper and more musical. The Kithara's clicking turned into rapid-fire chattering. The Vorthan flashed bright colors in quick bursts. Speaker Veltar raised one of his 4 hands, and the chamber gradually fell silent. His 6 eyes all focused on Jake with what could only be described as pity. Ambassador Morrison, Veltar said, his voice carrying a tone that reminded Jake of a teacher talking to a slow student. Your species has been part of the galactic community for what? 30 of your years? Perhaps 35? 32 years, Jake replied. 32 years, Veltar repeated, and another wave of alien amusement rippled through the chamber. The hegemony has been exploring space for over 10,000 years. The Zephyrites have been building starships since before your species learned to work metal. The Great Vorthan expanded across 3 galaxies while your ancestors were still living in caves. Jake felt heat rise in his face but kept his expression neutral. Behind him, Lieutenant Kate Phillips shifted slightly. She was his aide and one of the few other humans in the chamber. Jake could sense her tension without looking. Your proposal, Veltar continued, suggests that in 3 decades, humanity has somehow surpassed the accumulated knowledge of civilizations. Though that existed for millennia, does this seem reasonable to you? The chamber erupted again. This time the laughter was louder and more sustained. Jake caught glimpses of various alien expressions that all seemed to convey the same message. How adorable that the children think they can teach the adults. A Kithara delegate rose from her seat. Her name was Zaith, and she served as the military advisor for her species. Perhaps, she clicked in the translated speech that came through Jake's earpiece, the young humans should focus on endeavors more suited to their current capabilities? Indeed, agreed a Vorthan whose name Jake couldn't pronounce. The gaseous being flashed yellow and green as it spoke. Mining operations require good manual dexterity. Agricultural support is always needed. These are worthy contributions for a developing species. More laughter filled the chamber. Jake looked down at his datapad, then back up at the assembled delegates. Every piece of technology he had shown them was real. Every innovation had been tested and proven. But none of that seemed to matter here. Speaker Veltar stood again, and the chamber fell quiet. The Council appreciates humanity's enthusiasm, he said. However, galactic defense is a complex matter that requires extensive experience and proven technology. The proposals submitted today show promise for a young species, but they do not meet the standards required for implementation across the galaxy. Are you rejecting the proposal without review? Jake asked. The proposal has been reviewed, Veltar replied, by experts with far more experience than your species possesses. The decision is final. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. Not anger, exactly, but something harder and more determined. He had expected skepticism. He had prepared for tough questions and detailed examinations of the technology. But this was dismissal without consideration. I understand, Jake said simply. Excellent, Veltar said. Perhaps humanity will return in a few centuries with more mature proposals. Until then, we encourage your continued participation in appropriate galactic activities. The chamber began to empty as delegates rose from their seats and headed for the exits. Conversations continued in dozens of alien languages, and Jake caught enough fragments through his translator to know. They were still discussing how amusing the human presentation had been. Lieutenant Phillips stepped up beside him. Sir, she said quietly, should we file a formal protest? Jake looked around the nearly empty chamber. A few aliens still lingered, and he could hear them making what sounded like jokes. He closed his datapad and straightened his uniform jacket. No, he said, I think we've said everything we need to say here. They walked toward the exit together, their footsteps echoing in the vast space. Behind them, the last few delegates continued their conversations, still amused by the humans who thought they could contribute to galactic defense. None of them noticed the expression on Jake Morrison's face as he left the chamber. It wasn't anger or embarrassment, it was the look of someone who had just learned something very important about the people he was dealing with. Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of the human embassy on Nexus Prime, his footsteps echoing against the metal walls. The embassy was small compared to the massive structures that housed the other species. Everything about it felt temporary, like humans were just visiting and would eventually go home. Lieutenant Kate Phillips followed behind him, her tablet recording notes from the council session. She had been quiet since they left the chamber, but Jake could see the anger in her eyes. He felt the same way, but anger would not help them now. Sir, Kate finally said as they reached Jake's office, that was completely unfair. They didn't even look at the technical specifications. Jake settled behind his desk and activated the secure communication system. Fairness isn't really the point here, Lieutenant. What matters is what we do next. The office door chimed, and Admiral Lisa Carter entered. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. As commander of the human fleet stationed at Nexus Prime, she outranked everyone else in the embassy. But more than that, she had the kind of presence that made people listen when she spoke. How did it go? She asked, though her expression suggested she already knew. Exactly as you predicted, Jake replied. Complete dismissal. They treated our proposals like toys made by children. Admiral Carter nodded and took a seat across from Jake's desk. Good. Kate looked surprised. Good, ma'am? Lieutenant, how long have humans been monitoring galactic communications? The Admiral asked. Since we joined the Council, ma'am. Standard intelligence gathering. And what patterns have we observed regarding newer species? Kate thought for a moment. The Council tends to marginalize species that have been in space for less than 1,000 years. They're given minor roles in mining, agriculture, and basic manufacturing. Very few are allowed to participate in defense or advanced research. Exactly, Admiral Carter said. The Relani joined the Council 800 years ago. They're still considered junior members and are only permitted to work on water purification systems. The Jektari have been members for 600 years and are restricted to food production for deep space stations. Jake leaned back in his chair. You're saying this was always going to happen? I'm saying we planned for it to happen, Admiral Carter replied. Jake, activate Protocol 7. Jake's fingers moved over his console, entering a series of security codes. A new screen appeared showing an encrypted communication channel that connected directly to Earth. Within moments, President Don Hayes appeared on the display. The president looked tired. It was late evening in Washington, but he had clearly been waiting for this call. Behind him, Jake could see other figures moving around what looked like the Situation Room in the White House. Admiral Carter, Ambassador Morrison, the president said. I take it the council rejected our proposal? Unanimously, sir? Jake replied. Without serious consideration, President Hayes nodded. Then we proceed to Phase 2. Admiral, you have authorization to begin the withdrawal. Understood, sir, Admiral Carter said. What's the timeline? 6 months for complete implementation. Make it look gradual and natural. We don't want to alarm anyone or make them suspicious. The screen split to show another figure joining the call. Dr. Amy Rodriguez appeared from her office at the Colonial Research Division headquarters in Houston. She was younger than the others, but her reputation for innovation had made her one of the most important people in human space. Dr. Rodriguez, the president said, are our colonies ready for independent operation? More than ready, sir, she replied. In fact, our productivity has increased significantly since we stopped relying on galactic technology. Human colonies are now operating at 115% of projected efficiency. How is that possible? Kate asked. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. Simple. Galactic technology is designed to work for dozens of different species with different physiologies and different ways of thinking. It's a compromise solution. When we build technology specifically for humans, it works much better. Admiral Carter leaned forward. Doctor, what about our defense capabilities? All colonies are now equipped with our latest shield systems, Dr. Rodriguez said. The same technology Ambassador Morrison presented to the Council today. We've also completed testing on the new weapon platforms. Performance exceeds all expectations. Jake felt a strange mixture of pride and sadness. We're really doing this. We're pulling back from galactic society. We're repositioning, President Hayes corrected. There's a difference. We're not abandoning our responsibilities or becoming isolationist. We're simply choosing to develop independently rather than as junior partners in someone else's system. The president gestured to someone off-screen, and another window opened on the display. This one showed Captain Ben Parker aboard his ship, the exploration vessel Aurora. Ben was one of the best ship commanders in the human fleet, known for his ability to work with alien crews. Captain Parker, the president said, you've received your new orders? Yes, sir, Ben replied. All joint missions with alien partners are being transferred to other vessels. The Aurora will now operate exclusively in human-designated sectors. And the alien reaction to these changes? Ben shrugged. They barely notice, sir. Most of them seem to think we're finally accepting our proper place in the galactic hierarchy. Commander Velcris of the Hegemony actually complimented me on humanity's newfound wisdom. Admiral Carter made a sound that might have been a laugh. Perfect. The less attention we draw to this transition, the better. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up a new display showing a map of human space. Red dots marked colony worlds, while blue lines showed shipping routes and communication networks. Mr. President, I should mention that we're seeing some interesting developments in our outer colonies. Places like New Dallas and Kepler Station are requesting permission to pursue research projects that go beyond current galactic knowledge. What kind of research? Jake asked. Faster-than-light communication without using the galactic network. Energy systems that don't require the rare materials that only the elder species can provide. Defensive technologies that work specifically against the kinds of threats we've identified in our sector surveys. President Hayes looked thoughtful. Threats that the Council isn't taking seriously? That's correct, sir. Our long-range sensors are detecting unusual activity in the outer rim. Energy signatures that don't match any known technology. The few reports we've submitted to the Council have been filed under routine piracy and essentially ignored. Admiral Carter's expression grew serious. Doctor, how concerned should we be about these energy signatures? Honestly? Very concerned. The patterns suggest something systematic rather than random. And whatever is causing them is moving toward the galactic core. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. Finally, President Hayes spoke. It sounds like our timing might be better than we thought. Admiral Carter, implement the withdrawal immediately. Dr. Rodriguez, authorize all colonial research projects. Captain Parker, I want detailed reports on anything unusual you encounter in the outer sectors. And if the Council asks questions about our reduced participation? Jake asked. Tell them we're taking their advice, the President said. We're focusing on mining, agriculture, and other activities more suited to our level of development. Let them think they've put us in our place. The communication ended, leaving Jake, Kate, and Admiral Carter alone in the office. Outside the window, Jake could see alien ships moving through the space lanes around Nexus Prime. Soon, there would be fewer human vessels among them. Admiral, Jake said, do you really think this is the right choice? Lisa Carter stood and straightened her uniform. Jake, 32 years ago, when humans first made contact with galactic civilization, we were amazed by their technology and knowledge. We wanted to learn from them, to become part of something bigger than ourselves. She moved to the window and looked out at the alien vessels. But in all that time, have you ever seen them ask what humans might teach them? Have you ever seen them show curiosity about our ideas or our way of doing things? Jake thought about the laughter in the council chamber. No. Then we'll show them instead of telling them, Admiral Carter said. And maybe when the time comes, they'll be ready to listen. 6 months had passed since the council meeting, and Ryan Bell was exactly where he wanted to be. The chief engineer stood on the observation deck of New Dallas Colony, watching the final pieces of humanity's greatest project come together. Below him, massive towers stretched toward the sky, their surfaces covered in arrays that looked nothing like the galactic communication systems he had studied in school. Final connection in 30 seconds, announced Dr. Sarah Kim from the control room. Her voice came through the comm system with barely contained excitement. Ryan pressed his hand against the window and watched the technicians make the last adjustments. For 8 months, teams across human space had been working on this project. Every human colony, every research station, every ship in the fleet would soon be connected by a communication network that belonged entirely to humanity. Connection established, Dr. Kim announced. We have full network coverage across all human territories. The control room erupted in cheers, but Ryan felt something deeper than celebration. They had just taken their first real step toward independence. No more relying on galactic networks that could be monitored or controlled by other species. No more waiting for permission to communicate with their own colonies. His wrist communicator buzzed with an incoming message. The display showed it was coming from Proxima Station, over 40 light-years away. The message arrived instantly, with no delay and perfect clarity. Ryan, this is Michelle Stone at Proxima. Can you hear me clearly? Ryan smiled and activated his reply. Crystal clear, Michelle. How are things in your corner of space? Busy, came her response. You need to see what we've discovered here. 3 hours later, Ryan found himself in a virtual meeting room created by their new communication system. The technology allowed people from different colonies to meet as if they were in the same room. Dr. Michelle Stone appeared across from him, along with several other researchers from Proxima Station. Michelle looked tired but excited. Her lab coat was stained with various chemicals, and her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She had been working nonstop for weeks on something she called Project Barrier. Show him the test results, said Dr. Carlos Martinez, Michelle's Research partner, Michelle activated a holographic display that filled the space between them. It showed energy readings and shield configurations that made Ryan's engineering background tingle with possibilities. We've been experimenting with shield technology based on the proposals that were rejected by the Council, Michelle explained. But instead of trying to make it work for multiple species, we focused entirely on human needs and human ships. The display showed a human vessel surrounded by a shimmering energy field. Enemy fire from various galactic weapons struck the shield, but had no effect. The energy simply absorbed into the barrier and seemed to make it stronger. That's impossible, Ryan said. Energy shields can't absorb and redirect that much power. Galactic shields can't, Carlos corrected. But human intuition led us to try combinations that the galactic database said were impossible. Turns out the database was wrong. Michelle manipulated the display to show the technical specifications. We discovered that human ships have certain structural characteristics that work perfectly with adaptive energy fields. Other species built their ships differently, so this technology would never work for them. But for us, it's a perfect fit, Ryan finished. Michelle, how strong are these shields? Strong enough to withstand direct hits from hegemony battle cruisers, she replied. We've run simulations against every weapon system in the galactic database. Our shields outperform anything currently in use. Ryan felt his heart rate increase. This was bigger than just improved defense. This was a game changer. Have you shared this with Earth? We're preparing a full report, Michelle said. But Ryan, there's something else. Our long-range sensors have been picking up strange readings from the outer rim territories. The display changed to show a star map with red indicators scattered along the edges of known space. The pattern looked random at first, but Ryan could see an underlying structure. What am I looking at? He asked. Destroyed colonies, Carlos said quietly. Not human colonies. These were outposts belonging to the minor species. The Jelani, the Kredik, the Terminus. All of them sent distress calls before going silent. Ryan studied the pattern more carefully. When did this start? About 3 months ago, Michelle replied. The attacks seemed to be moving inward toward the galactic core. But here's the interesting part. We sent reports to the Galactic Council through the proper channels. And? They filed them under routine piracy and recommended that the minor species improve their local defense forces. Ryan looked at the display again. The destroyed colonies formed a rough line that pointed directly toward the heart of galactic civilization. This wasn't piracy. This was something systematic and organized. Michelle, I need you to compile everything you have on these attacks. Send it through our new network to Earth and to all colony commanders. And accelerate your shield testing. Already. Done, she replied. Ryan, there's something else you should know. We're not the only ones making breakthroughs. The display changed again, this time showing reports from human colonies across space. Each one detailed innovations and discoveries that had been made in the past 6 months. Faster engines that didn't require galactic fuel sources. Weapons. Systems designed specifically for human reflexes and tactics. Manufacturing processes that were more efficient than anything in the galactic industrial database. It's like we've been holding ourselves back, Carlos observed, trying to fit into their systems instead of building our own. Ryan's communicator buzzed with an urgent message. The display showed it was coming from Mars, flagged with the highest security clearance. General Chris Moore's face appeared in a small window. Ryan, I need you to join a priority briefing, the general said. We have new intelligence that changes everything. On my way, sir, Ryan replied. The virtual meeting dissolved, and Ryan found himself back on New Dallas. But instead of the excitement he had felt earlier, a cold worry was growing in his stomach. The pieces were starting to come together, and the picture they formed was not reassuring. An hour later, Ryan sat in another virtual meeting, this time with military and intelligence officials from across human space. General Moore presided over the briefing from his headquarters on Mars. Next to him sat Agent Susan Torres, one of the best intelligence analysts in human service. People, we have a problem, General Moore began. Agent Torres has compiled data from multiple sources, and the situation is more serious than we initially thought. Susan activated a display that showed the same star map Michelle had presented, but with additional information. Energy signatures, ship movements, and communication intercepts created a complex picture of activity in the outer rim. "What we're seeing isn't random piracy," Susan explained. "The attacks follow a specific pattern. Each target is selected for maximum psychological impact on the galactic powers. The attackers are testing defenses and studying response times." "Who's behind it?" asked Captain Ben Parker, joining the meeting from his ship. "We don't know yet," Susan replied. "But we know what they're capable of. Analysis of the attack sites shows weapon signatures that don't match anything in our databases. The technology appears to be adaptive, changing its approach based on the defenses it encounters." General Moore leaned forward. "The concerning part is how the Galactic Council is responding, or rather how they're not responding. They seem completely unaware of the scale of this threat." "Sir," Ryan said, "Dr. Stone at Proxima Station has developed new shield technology that might be effective against these attacks. Should we share this information with the Council?" General Moore and Susan Torres exchanged glances. "Ryan, 3 days ago, we tried to provide the Council with detailed intelligence about these attacks. We offered to share our sensor data and analysis. What happened?" Speaker Veltar thanked us for our concern and suggested that humans focus on matters within our level of expertise. He assured us that the galactic powers have the situation well in hand. Ryan felt the same cold anger he had experienced in the Council chamber 6 months ago. "They're ignoring us again. Worse than that," Susan said. "They're ignoring the threat itself. Our analysis suggests that whatever is behind these attacks will reach the core systems within months. But the galactic military hasn't changed their patrol patterns or upgraded their defenses." General Moore stood and moved to a window that showed the red planet stretching out below. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a choice to make. We can continue trying to warn people who won't listen, or we can prepare to defend ourselves and hope we're strong enough when the time comes." Captain Parker spoke from his ship. "General, what are your orders?" "Full defensive preparations for all human territories. Implement Dr. Stone's shield technology immediately. Begin production of our new weapon systems. And maintain complete communication silence with the galactic networks." "Sir," Ryan asked, "are we going dark?" "As of right now, human space is operating under full autonomy. If the galactic powers want to ignore this threat, that's their choice. But when it reaches them, they're going to discover that humanity has been busy." The emergency alarm echoed through the halls of Nexus Prime for the first time in over 300 years. Speaker Veltar rushed through the corridors toward the command center, his forearms struggling to carry the datapads and communication. Devices that had been thrust upon him by panicked aides, the great station that housed the Galactic Council, had been designed to be a symbol of peace and cooperation. Its massive corridors and soaring chambers spoke of civilizations that had moved beyond war and conflict. But today, those same halls buzzed with fear and confusion as representatives from dozens of species tried to understand what was happening. To their galaxy, Veltar entered the command center to find chaos. The circular room was filled with holographic displays showing star systems across the galaxy. Many of those displays now showed red indicators where thriving worlds had been just days before. "Commander," Reek Tool of the Hegemony Fleet turned as Veltar approached. The military leader's usually perfect composure was cracked, and his purple skin had taken on a pale, almost gray tinge. "Speaker, we've lost contact with the Serenity system," Reek Tool reported. "That's 17 systems in the past week. The pattern is accelerating." Veltar looked at the main display, which showed the galactic map with the affected areas marked in red. The pattern formed a rough line moving steadily toward the galactic core, like a disease spreading through healthy tissue. "What are our military forces reporting?" Veltar asked. "That's the problem, sir. We sent the 5th Fleet to investigate the Meridian system 3 days ago. They found nothing. No planets, no debris, no energy signatures. Just empty space where a star system used to be. Veltar felt something cold settle in his stomach. That's, impossible. Stars don't just disappear. A new voice spoke from across the room. Admiral Zathara of the Zephyrite had arrived, her crystalline form reflecting the red lights of the alarm system. Speaker Veltar, my fleet encountered the enemy 2 hours ago at the Kethmoran system. The room fell silent. Veltar turned. To face the Admiral, what did you find? Ships unlike anything in our databases. They appeared to be constructed from some kind of black metal that absorbed our energy weapons. When we fired upon them, they adapted. By the second volley, our weapons had no effect at all. Admiral Zathara moved to the central display and activated a recording. The image showed sleek, dark vessels that seemed to bend light around them. They moved with a fluid grace that was both beautiful and terrifying. We lost 60% of my fleet before I ordered the retreat, she continued. The enemy ships didn't pursue us. They simply continued their work. What work? Veltar asked. The recording changed to show something that made everyone in the room step back. Massive machines, larger than anything the galactic powers had ever built, were systematically dismantling the planets in the Kethmoran system. They broke down matter at the molecular level and fed it into construction bays that produced more ships, more machines, more of themselves. By the ancient codes, whispered someone from the back of the room. Commander Reektool stepped forward. Admiral, did you identify the species responsible for this? There is no species, Admiral Zathara replied. These are machines. Artificial intelligences that consume everything in their path and use the raw materials to make more of themselves. The room erupted in concerned chatter as delegates from various species tried to process this information. Veltar raised his hands for silence, but it took several minutes for the room to calm down. How long do we have before they reach the core systems? Veltar asked. Admiral Zathara consulted her datapad. At their current rate of advance, perhaps 6 weeks. Maybe less if they continue to accelerate their reproduction rate. Commander Reektool activated his own display. I've recalled all available fleets to defensive positions around our most important systems. But, Speaker, our current weapons and shields are proving ineffective against this enemy. What about the research divisions? Surely our scientists can develop countermeasures. They're working on it, sir, but they estimate it will take months to understand the enemy technology well enough to create effective defenses. Veltar looked around the room at the faces of his advisors and military commanders. For thousands of years, the galactic powers had maintained peace through overwhelming technological superiority. They had never encountered an enemy that could match their capabilities, let alone surpass them. We need allies, Veltar said finally. Contact every member species. We'll need their fleets and their resources if we're going to survive this. Sir, said a younger aide, what about the humans? The room fell silent again. Veltar felt his skin darken with embarrassment as he remembered the human ambassador who had stood in the council chamber just months before, offering defensive technologies that the council had dismissed without consideration. The humans, Veltar repeated slowly. Yes, contact Ambassador Morrison immediately. Schedule an emergency session. Commander Reektool consulted his communication device. Sir, I'm showing that human space has gone dark. Our standard communication channels are not reaching any human territories. What do you mean, gone dark? No response to any signals, sir. It's as if they've completely cut themselves off from the galactic network. Admiral Zathara moved to her own communication station. I'm detecting the same thing. Human colonies, human ships, human installations, none of them are responding to standard hails. A terrible thought occurred to Veltar. Are they already destroyed? Could the enemy have reached human space without use knowing? Negative, sir, reported a technician from the sensor station. We're detecting no signs of the enemy machines in human territories. But we're also not detecting normal human activity. No ship movements, no industrial signatures, no communication traffic. The room buzzed with speculation and worry. If humanity had already fallen to this enemy, then the galactic core had lost a significant number of potential allies. If they had simply gone silent for other reasons, that raised different but equally concerning questions. Keep trying to contact them, Valtar ordered. Send messages on all frequencies. Use emergency protocols if necessary. 3 hours passed before a response finally came. The main communication display activated, showing Ambassador Jake Morrison in what appeared to be his office on Nexus Prime, but something was different about him. He looked older, more serious, and there was a hardness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Speaker Veltar, Jake said, his voice carefully neutral. I received your urgent messages. I understand the Council wishes to discuss the current crisis. Ambassador Morrison, thank you for responding. We need humanity's assistance in dealing with this threat to galactic civilization. Jake was quiet for a moment, and Valtar could see him choosing his words carefully. I see, the same galactic civilization that dismissed our defensive proposals 6 months ago as the fantasies of an inexperienced species. The words hit Valtar like a physical blow. In the chaos and fear of the crisis, he had hoped that past disagreements could be set aside. But Jake's tone made it clear that humanity had not forgotten how they had been treated. Ambassador, I understand your concerns, but this crisis affects all of us. Surely we can put aside past misunderstandings in the face of galactic extinction. Misunderstandings, Jake repeated, and there was something like dark amusement in his voice. Speaker Veltar, let me be completely clear. You're asking for help from the same people you publicly mocked and dismissed. The same people you suggested should focus on mining and agriculture because they weren't advanced enough for real galactic participation. Commander Reektool stepped forward. Ambassador, our scans show that human space has gone completely silent. Are your people safe? Jake looked directly at the commander. Our people are exactly where they need to be, doing exactly what they need to do. What does that mean? Veltar asked. It means, Speaker, that when the galactic powers chose to ignore our warnings about threats in the Outer Rim, we made our own preparations. It means that while you were dismissing human capabilities, we were developing those capabilities in ways you never bothered to consider. The communication display flickered and Jake stood up. I'll convey your request for assistance to my superiors on Earth, but I think you should know that any response will take into account how humanity has been treated by this council. Ambassador, wait, Valtar called out, but the display had already gone dark, leaving the command center in silence except for the continuing alarm that echoed through the halls of Nexus Prime. Admiral Zathara spoke first. He knows something. Did you hear his tone? They've been preparing for this? Commander Reektool nodded. The humans warned us about Outer Rim activity months ago. We dismissed their reports as inexperience. Veltar looked at the galactic display, where more red indicators appeared every hour as additional systems fell to the advancing enemy. For the first time in his long career, he wondered if the galactic powers had made a mistake that might cost them everything. Keep trying to contact them, he said finally, and pray to whatever gods you believe in that they're more forgiving than we have any right to expect. 3 weeks had passed since the first emergency alarm, and Nexus Prime felt like a city under siege. The great station's corridors echoed with the footsteps of military personnel and desperate diplomats trying to coordinate a defense against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Speaker Veltar stood in his private office, staring out at the space around the station. Once, those lanes had been filled with ships from dozens of species, carrying trade and diplomacy between the stars. Now, most of the traffic consisted of refugee vessels fleeing from systems that no longer existed. His aide entered without knocking, something that would have been unthinkable just a month ago. Speaker, we have a situation at the outer perimeter. Veltar turned from the window. Another attack? No, sir. A single human ship has appeared at the edge of the system. They're requesting permission to dock and address the council. Veltar felt his heart skip a beat. After weeks of silence from human space, this was the first contact anyone had received. Just one ship? Yes, sir. But Speaker, you need to see the vessel for yourself. They walked quickly to the command center, where the main display showed an image of the approaching human ship. Veltar stopped and stared. The vessel looked nothing like the human ships he remembered from before. It was sleek and dark, with hull plating that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Scorch marks covered sections of the hull, but the damage appeared to be from weapons that Veltar didn't recognize. "It's been in combat," Admiral Zathara observed. Her crystalline form reflected the light from the displays as she studied the image. "But those weapon signatures don't match anything in our databases." Commander Reektool activated his scanning systems. "The ship's design incorporates technology we've never seen before. Energy signatures are completely foreign to our records." "Sir," the communications officer called out, "the human vessel is transmitting identification. Captain Alex Cooper of the Earth Defense Force vessel Retribution." Veltar had never heard that name before, either the captain or the ship. "Grant them docking permission. Escort them to Bay 7 and provide full diplomatic honors." 2 hours later, Veltar found himself back in the council chamber where this crisis had begun months before. But now, instead of the casual dismissal of human proposals, the assembled delegates waited with desperate hope for any assistance that might save their civilization. The chamber doors opened, and Captain Alex Cooper entered. She was a woman of medium height with dark hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. Her uniform was clean but showed signs of recent repair. More importantly, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had faced the enemy and survived. Captain Cooper walked to the center of the chamber, the same spot where Ambassador Morrison had stood when the council had laughed at human proposals. But there was no laughter now. The assembled delegates watched her with the attention that desperate people give to anyone who might offer hope. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Captain Cooper began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "I am here to discuss the crisis that threatens all our civilizations." Speaker Veltar rose from his seat. "Captain Cooper, we are grateful for any assistance humanity can provide. Our situation has become quite desperate." "I understand," Captain Cooper replied. "Before we discuss assistance, however, I think you need to understand what humanity has been doing for the past 2 years." "2 years?" Admiral Zathara asked. "But the crisis only began 3 weeks ago?" Captain Cooper activated a holographic display that appeared above her head. It showed the same galactic map that the Council had been studying, but with additional information. Red indicators marked not just the recent attacks, but dozens of other incidents stretching back over 2 years. "The enemy you call the Devourers first appeared in human space 26 months ago," Captain Cooper explained. "They destroyed the mining colony at Kepler 7 before we even knew they existed." The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. Veltar raised his hands for silence. "Captain, why were we not informed of this?" "We tried to inform you," Captain Cooper replied, and her tone carried an edge that made several delegates shift uncomfortably. Human intelligence reported unusual activity in the Outer Rim territories. Ambassador Morrison submitted detailed reports about energy signatures and missing colonies. The Council filed those reports under routine piracy and suggested we focus on matters within our level of expertise. Veltar felt his skin darken with shame. "You're saying humanity has been fighting this enemy for 2 years while we remained unaware?" "Not unaware," Captain Cooper corrected. "Dismissive?" "There's a difference." She manipulated the display to show detailed battle reports, weapon specifications, and tactical analyses. When it became clear that the galactic powers were not interested in human intelligence, we made the decision to handle the threat ourselves. Commander Reektool leaned forward. "Captain, our fleets have proven ineffective against Devourer technology. How have humans managed to fight them?" "By thinking differently," Captain Cooper replied. "Your weapons and shields are designed to work. For dozens of species with different physiologies and tactical approaches, they're compromised solutions. Human technology is designed specifically for human ships, human reflexes, and human ways of thinking." The display changed to show footage of human ships in combat against the Dark Devourer vessels. The human ships moved with a fluid precision that the galactic fleets had never achieved. Their weapons seemed to anticipate devourer adaptations, while their shields absorbed and redirected enemy fire with impossible efficiency. "This is remarkable," Admiral Zathara said. "Your casualties?" "Significant," Captain Cooper admitted, "but manageable. Human space has not only survived the devourer attacks, we've learned to counter them effectively." Speaker Veltar stood and walked down to the speaking floor. "Captain Cooper, humanity has clearly developed capabilities that far exceed what we understood. We formally request your assistance in defending galactic civilization." Captain Cooper looked at him for a long moment. "Speaker Veltar, do you remember what you said to Ambassador Morrison 6 months ago? You suggested that humanity focus on mining and agriculture activities more suited to our level of development. Captain, surely we can set aside past misunderstandings in the face of this crisis." Past misunderstandings," Captain Cooper repeated. "Is that what you call publicly mocking our capabilities and dismissing our contributions as the fantasies of children?" The chamber fell silent. Several delegates looked uncomfortable as they remembered their own reactions to human proposals. "However," Captain Cooper continued, "humanity does not hold grudges when innocent lives are at stake. We are prepared to assist in the defense of galactic civilization, but our assistance comes with conditions." "Name them," Veltar said immediately. "Captain." Cooper activated a new display showing detailed proposals for military cooperation, technology sharing, and political restructuring. First, full technological partnership between humanity and all galactic species. No more junior member status. No more restrictions on human research and development. "Agreed," Veltar said without hesitation. Second, equal representation in galactic governance. Human colonies and human interests will have the same voice as any other major power. Several delegates exchanged glances, but none objected. "Agreed," Veltar said again. Third, formal recognition of human sovereignty over all territories currently claimed by human colonies. No future interference in human internal affairs. "Agreed." Captain Cooper closed the display and looked around the chamber. "Then we have an accord. Human defense forces will coordinate with galactic fleets to eliminate the devourer threat." As the session ended and delegates began filing out to organize the joint defense, Speaker Veltar approached Captain Cooper. He found her gathering her equipment with the same quiet efficiency that Ambassador Morrison had shown months before. "Captain," Veltar said, "I owe humanity an apology. We failed to recognize your capabilities and dismissed your contributions. I hope you can forgive our short-sightedness." Captain Cooper looked at him with those eyes that had seen too much combat. "Speaker Veltar," the council laughed when Ambassador Morrison offered partnership as equals. "You treated our proposals like jokes told by children." She finished packing her equipment and straightened her uniform. "We hope you understand why we chose to let our actions speak instead of our words." She walked toward the exit, then paused and looked back. "The human fleet will begin joint operations within 48 hours. But Speaker, remember this moment. Remember what happened when you chose arrogance over cooperation. Because humanity remembers everything." Captain Cooper left the chamber, leaving Veltar alone with his thoughts and his shame. Around him, the empty seats that had once held delegates who laughed at human ambition now waited for representatives who would have to learn an entirely new way of thinking about their human allies. 6 months later, the last Devourer fleet was destroyed in a joint operation that showcased the best of both human innovation and galactic resources. But the real victory had been won in the council chamber, when humanity's quiet dignity in the face of mockery ultimately taught the galaxy a lesson about respect that would reshape interstellar civilization forever.